Welcome to In Conversation With, the part of the channel where we'll be diving deep into topics by sitting down with the people who know them best. Each episode will bring you an unscripted, genuine chat with either a local campaigner, a leader, or someone with the story of how local politics works or doesn't. Today we'll be discussing Worcestershire's BREP programme, and to talk to us about it is Councillor Sam Evans. Sam is the Worcestershire County Councillor for Bromsgrove East Division and also sits on Bromsgrove District Council as the representative for Slideslow and is the current chair of the council. He'll be talking to us today in his role as a Worcestershire County Councillor. So, welcome to the channel, Sam.
Hi, John. Thanks very much for having me.
Not a problem at all. So, the reason for bringing you on is because we are hearing lots and lots about BREP at the moment across the whole of the county. So before we get too deep into the subject, and especially for anyone watching who doesn't know what it is, can you give us a bit of an idea of what it is and why we are hearing so much about it at the moment?
Yeah, sure thing. So BREP is the Bromsgrove Road Enhancement Programme. In brief, it purports to tackle some of the traffic issues we've got in Bromsgrove, but actually in practice, it's not going very well. And if anything, it's going to make our issues worse rather than actually make them better.
Okay, so BREP stands for Bromsgrove Road Enhancement
Bromsgrove, Road Enhancement Programme.
Programme, sorry, and it's
right.
As part of the fourth transport plan that the Worcestershire County Council held, and they identified, and it's the A38, isn't it?
That's right. So the A38 runs basically through the town of Bromsgrove. We're situated between the M5 motorway and the M42 motorway, and BREP as a scheme runs basically all the way, mostly through the urban part of Bromsgrove along the A38 corridor. There are other schemes associated with it, so sort of like so-called sort of small side projects that come off the A38 that have been included as part of BREP, which are just as controversial, if not more controversial with some of them, which have been causing a fair bit of chaos, and a few of those are in my division as well.
Okay, so you say the 38, that's the main trunk road through the middle. That's kind of a strategic. That's what they've looked at it for. It's a strategic route through. So it goes, they said, from the motorway as it goes up towards the sort of the Birmingham end of the patch, right through to where it turns off to Redditch, and then beyond out towards Witchbold, just as a
exactly.
Okay, so when was this supposed to start? First of all, because it seems to be going on for a long time.
Yeah. It's been discussed for a long time. If you don't mind, if I just give you a bit of context and background for where we are in Bromsgrove in terms of the traffic issues we've had and the plans that have been talked about. So because of where we are situated between these two motorways, whenever there's an issue on one of the motorways, the traffic has to go through the town of Bromsgrove, which naturally happens quite a lot and causes a lot of chaos, especially when most of those people don't actually need to visit the town of Bromsgrove. That's why for quite a long time, the Lib Dems in Bromsgrove, along with other campaign groups as well, were pushing for a Western Relief Road, which if it was enacted, it could have mitigated these issues by having people effectively sort of ring around, the west of Bromsgrove without having to go through the town, which would have solved a lot of our traffic issues. Unfortunately, despite multiple council reports showing, where we could do it, how much it would cost, there was houses that have now started to be built on the site. That was the key site. So those 3,000 houses being built mean that key site we were talking about for years is one that now can't be used. And as a result, the county council thought the best way to tackle our issues was to do some works on the A38 rather than, sit with this plan that people have been talking about for years and it's costed and showed how we can do it.
Let's cause as much disruption as we can instead of actually doing something. So where was the Western Relief Road supposed to start and sort of end, if for want of a better term?
So there's multiple reports that was done by the district council. One was by Mott MacDonald, and I think it's the Mott MacDonald report. I can share with you the reports after the interview, but I think it's the Mott MacDonald report which set out the multiple sites we could have. In brief, it would have gone around the west of Bromsgrove and would have gone through the Perryfields area. And Perryfields now is the one site where there's a lot of development going on. So it would have been around that area. Yeah.
Okay. As somebody who only vaguely knows Bromsgrove, I know where Perryfields is, so that's
Yeah.
quite. I don't have to sort of go.
Yeah.
So they, because they basically decided not to go ahead with the relief road, they then create this BREP program. What was I mean, I know what the position was because I'm part of the Liberal Democrats, but in terms of when it first got announced and they started running consultations, what was your response and the response of the team in Bromsgrove?
So it was originally started under the Conservative-run county council, and there were consultations going on during the COVID years. Us as Lib Dem councillors in Bromsgrove, we've been holding their feet to the fire from day one on this. Some of the initial plans were suggesting on the A38 as you go towards Licky End, which is right near the M42 island, that they were going to cut off the turning into School Lane, where that takes you into the village of Licky End, which has a first school, and that road is used quite a lot. So in 2021, we managed to get a protest of loads of residents standing on the corner of the road, opposing it back then before any spades have even gone on the ground, years before we were anywhere through, properly getting these plans sorted. So yeah, Lib Dems have a good track record on this. We've been holding the feet to the fire for the previous Conservative administration on this and the current Reform ones that are implementing it as well.
Okay, so what was the response then to that? What did you feel that you, as the Liberal Democrats, but also as residents of the town and councillors of the town, do you think you were being listened to by the Conservatives? We'll just deal with the Conservatives for the time being.
No, in brief, I don't feel like we were. A lot of residents I speak to don't feel like that was the case either. The consultations that happened were on fairly small scale, and a lot of people it missed. So there's so many people that didn't get their chance to wear their views on these plans when the initial consultations happened. So yeah, we definitely feel like we've not been listened to in Bromsgrove.
You're having this massive strategic infrastructure project go ahead, and people don't feel that they've been listened to by the Conservatives. That doesn't really surprise me. Let's be honest. But that must have been incredibly frustrating for you and the residents to not feel that you were being listened to over such a huge project that is obviously ongoing. So that was sort of COVID years. So we're talking 2020, 2021?
Yeah, 2021. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How long is this scheme supposed to take to implement?
Well, it's meant to be completed by the end of next year. I say meant to be because certain parts of the project have been facing delays. So all being well, we will finally be done by the end of 2026. But let's see what happens on that.
And do you think when it is completed that it will actually have it's a big open question there, but do you think it will achieve its stated aims?
No, it won't. So effectively, the plans for just the A38 as part of BREP are that parts of it's going to include some cycle provision and cycle lanes. But the key thing they're focusing on is having parts of the A38 that will go from a dual carriageway to single carriageway and back out again. So effectively, you're going to end up with just bottlenecking traffic. So I don't think it's going to solve our issues at all.
That sounds to me, as a sort of layperson who hasn't looked at the plans, I say layperson, but as you said, looks like it's creating pinch points along the route. Yeah. Are those pinch points in high traffic areas or high volume areas, or what's the purpose of having those pinch points?
Yeah, in terms of the purpose, I mean, they're purporting to try and speed up traffic, but pretty much all of that A38 stretch from the M42 island all the way as you go down through Licky End towards past the Opals, continuing on from Bromsgrove towards the south of Bromsgrove, pretty much all of it, just get clogged when it's an issue on the motorway or peak traffic hours. So there's no one specific area where these issues happen, but yeah, the aim it's purporting to do is to try and speed up traffic, but I'm quite concerned it's not going to do that. And the issue we've got with these BREP plans is it's not just what they're doing on the A38 that is, going to cause our issues. So with the A38, they're trying to speed up the traffic, but some of the measures we're getting out of it in the other areas are not helpful at all. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, where you've got the village of Licky End, the plans are to cut the turning off, so you can't turn into School Lane, which means that anybody that wants to drop their kids off at school in Licky End is going to have to drive all the way down the A38 up to the M42 Island, do a full turn around the M42 Island, and then come down to go into Licky End that way. Or they can go through the villages of Finston and Burcott, through the narrow country roads, which are definitely not suitable at all to handle this level of traffic.
And going back to a little bit of what you did at county most recently in most recent meeting, you asked about one of those things, which we'll come on to in a second, but you also asked the Police and Crime Commissioner about rural roads and issues with cars down there. So I suppose they're both meeting up at the same point as a bit of a crisis almost in waiting to happen.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, so my division of Bromsgrove East is sort of half urban, half rural. So it covers, the eastern part of the town of Bromsgrove, but then stretches out into the villages of like Blackwell, Burcott, Bentley, Portsmouth. So yeah, I've got a fair few issues with some narrow country roads that are 60 miles an hour, which have low visibility, a lot of traffic traveling much more faster than it should. So those issues all exacerbate together, don't they? Yeah.
And did I read something? I've read quite a few things over the last couple of weeks about this, but did I read that they're trying to look at the speed limit on the A38, even though that will probably not actually solve any more problems? It will probably create even more.
I don't know what you mean by trying to look at. So part of the plans actually, well, what we've been experiencing since the works have started is that the speed limit has been dropped from 60 to 30, pretty much the entirety of the A38 now, that runs through the town of Bromsgrove. So that in itself has obviously made things a lot worse. I understand why they've reduced the speed limit whilst the works are going on, but yeah, some parts of the A38 will be slower now than they were previously.
Yeah. Whenever I've driven through Bromsgrove, particularly coming from the sort of the Kidderminster side, if I'm going anywhere, my sister-in-law lives in Bromsgrove, so we do have to come over every now and again. I always seem to hit traffic. It doesn't matter which route I come into, and that was before the plan. So it'd be interesting to see going forward whether, as you said, whether it's going to have that negative impact or not. I want to switch a little bit to what you were talking about, or the questions you were asking at county in particular regarding Scheme 6, which was Regents Park. And you also mentioned active travel. And that, if I've read it correctly, Scheme 6 or Phase 3 Scheme 6 is predominantly aimed at active travel. So can you talk a bit about your frustrations or what your residents are finding and why you ended up asking the question at county?
Yeah, of course. So part of my division covers the housing estates of the Overruns and Parklands, and Regents Park Road is the main road that runs through that those two estates. There's 900 homes, give or take, on the Overruns and Parklands, and the only way to access them is by using Regents Park Road. There's two ways in and out, but you still can only use that road. Okay. The plans that they've started to implement for Regents Park Road mean that there's been a one-way closure since July. They were meant to complete in October, but unfortunately are now delayed until Christmas. So it's caused absolute chaos for residents, as I'm sure you can imagine. But the plans themselves are also not popular, and I don't think they're going to solve any issues at all. So I suppose it's hard unless you're sort of looking at it on a map. But Regents Park Road is quite wide, near where you've got the large Overruns roundabout, which takes you onto the A38 and onto the Redditch short carriageway. Okay. There was originally a parking bay there. There's a decent size footway you could have walked down. Part of these BREP plans have scrapped completely the parking bay. They've narrowed the road to include this cycle path, but the cycle path itself is only a really small stretch, and it's just to hook up where you've got an existing cycle path, move it slightly across onto a shared pedestrian footway, just to take you down to the end of the road, which is not far at all. It's about, you could probably cycle it in 30 seconds.
Right.
And we've also lost trees as a result. So it's not been popular at all. No.
So to encourage people to be more active and potentially use less vehicle movements and stuff, they've chopped down trees and actually made it more difficult to get around.
Yeah, exactly that.
Sounds about right. So That's scheme 6. So clearly there was scheme 1 through to 5 beforehand. What is now scheme, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 and beyond? And does that impact what this work has been done? Is that what's, because obviously if you're now saying that you're delayed until potentially December, that's going to have a knock-on effect because they can't start any other work until they finish that work, surely. Or not?
Well, unfortunately, John, that's not what's been happening. So with obviously there's various schemes and phases and different parts of the A38 and surrounding roads, such as I've mentioned in Licky End, you've got School Lane, you've got Regents Park Road and the Ovals. And these different schemes, although it would make sense to do them all individually, that's not what's happened. So we started work on the A38. I think it was either March or April of 2024. Pretty much the entire stretch ended up getting all the barriers go up and the road closures for certain parts. They've not just done one area at once, they've pretty much done everywhere all at once. But that means everything's been a lot slower because they can't concentrate on a specific project to finish that one and move on to another one. So yeah, there's more to come, and there's other bits that we don't necessarily know if they're going to go ahead because they haven't physically actually come forward with some of the plans, like Drummond Road, for example, which if you don't mind, if I could talk about a bit in detail.
Yep.
So Drummond Road is in my division of Bromsgrove East again. It's a road that runs past Aston Fields Middle School, and it connects onto the housing estate of Harwood Park, which is 425 homes. And there's only 2 ways into Harwood Park. One is on New Road, and the other one is using Drummond Road. And in the infinite wisdom of the county council, they decided that Drummond Road will be made one way as part of BREP to allow for a cycle path down on one side. Now, it didn't go down very well with residents of Harwood Park, and we actually pushed it back as Lib Dems. We pushed back, and in fairness to my Conservative predecessor, he did voice concerns about it as well. And thankfully, we managed to get a U-turn on that one. The problem is, they said they're still going to have to do some works at Drummond Road, and they're yet to present the plans for what they're going to be. So, in brief, yes, they've started nearly everywhere all at once, but there's still things that we're still waiting to actually see what they're going to do with. So, let's see.
So, just going on to the comment there about making it one, was that going to be a permanent one-way on Drummond Road? So then you'd have to essentially go round the estate to come out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would be quite annoying, I would imagine.
Yeah, to access 425 homes, and only have 2 ways. One way to access the estate and 2 ways out, would have been absolutely chaotic. So yeah, I'm glad that after pushing back on that, we've managed to get that scheme cancelled.
How hard do you think that was?
They're going to bring some plans forward. So let's see.
How hard did you find it to make representations about Drummond Road in terms of getting your residents, first of all, to give you that feedback so you had an evidence base to then go to county? And this obviously happened under the previous Conservative administration.
That's right.
And they actually listened to you, which is something.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty overwhelmingly the case that there was opposition to these plans for Drummond Road. I say, hands up, I actually live on this estate, so I understand the plans and how the roads work around here, quite well. At least I hope I should. So yeah, I mean, it's very hard to find anybody that thought it was a good idea. And thankfully, as I say, so both myself and actually my Conservative predecessor had raised concerns about the scheme. And they actually, interestingly, they decided to say they're going to put the plans on hold and amend them. They actually decided that during the election campaign that just happened, the county council. So convenient timing. They obviously were hearing on the doorstep just how annoyed people are about this, and obviously seeing our opposition to Lib Dems, and presumably, thought, okay, we need to actually listen on this. So yeah.
And do you think people, just on that particular note, do you think your residents who you now represent saw the action that you were taking and had been taking for, at that point, nearly 4 years? Do you think that for you was a deciding factor, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, obviously other factors as well. But I keep in touch with my residents for regular newsletters, and on many occasions I've been raising the Drummond Road one-way issues. I actually, leading up to the election campaign for the district council that we had in 2023, when I became district councillor, that was something we were raising then. And obviously residents at the time were listening to our message and being quite concerned about the plan. So we've got a good track record of consistency on that. Yeah.
That's good. And I will say, as a sort of an insider outsider from somebody in the party but outside of your particular patch, I do see you and your colleagues both at county level and district regularly actively talking about not just BREP but also the local plan and a few of the other issues that are going on locally. So it does seem outside of where we are, or where you are, I should say, that you are incredibly active in regarding this. So where do you foresee going forward now the Conservatives are not in control of administration and we now have the Reform minority administration? Where do you see things progressing to in the next year and a half or so until the work might be completed?
Well, I'll give credit where credit's due, to be fair. The Reform Cabinet member for Highways, which I have disagreed with on many things, and I will continue to disagree with him, he actually has been willing to pick up the phone to me, and he has, met with me to talk about, the plans. Although we disagree, I am grateful to them actually for having that dialogue open. So I'll put that out there first before I go on the attack.
This is Councillor Carl Perks.
Yeah, Carl. Yeah. No, fair play to him for being able to be in touch with us. As I say, he's the cabinet member for Highways, so he's effectively the face of this. And I completely disagree with what they're doing, but I appreciate the communication he's happy to do. So I think where we are with the county council now is that rather disappointingly, Reform actually made some promises on BREP to residents, and they've actually not met them. So they pledged on their social media, I think it was the 26th of May, 23rd of May, so around that time, a 5-point action plan that they would do, and they've unfortunately not gone ahead with it. So with Regents Park Road in particular, they have pledged to pause the scheme and to review it, and they were going to cancel any unnecessary schemes in their view. Now, there is nothing they've come forward and have said is unnecessary. There is nothing that they have cancelled. One concession I managed to get out of them, along with the campaign group called Revised BREP, with the meeting as well that suggested this alongside me, was to postpone the Regents Park Road works by 4 days, just so we could get the Stoke Road, which was a nearby road, to get that project to open as a one-way. Because to me, it was absolute madness to close off Regents Park Road while Stoke Road was nearly going to be done, but you're going to have 4 days of even worse chaos. So that's the one concession we've got from them so far. But other than that, they've continued full steam ahead with the Conservatives' plans on BREP, and unfortunately, we haven't really seen a change at all, to be honest.
There is a running theme there where Reform at the moment do seem to just be continuing what the Tories had already started to implement, with the exception of the school, which again, another subject for another time. But I wonder, those 5 points, because I know that Phil Hingley, when he stood against Sam in the most recent election, made some comments about BREP. They weren't quite the 5 points, but sort of similar. Do you think that if they'd implemented any of those 5 points, that they would have made any significant change or had an impact? Or do you think actually trying to continue with the scheme as it currently is would have been better?
If they'd implemented even if they just implemented one or two of those promises, it would have been a lot better than where we are now. As I said, one of their things that they suggested was cancelling the unnecessary projects, which in my view as a Lib Dem would have been the Drummond, whatever's going to come forward on Drummond Road, we'll see, but cancel the Regents Park Road project, because at the time when they made the promise, they hadn't stuck spades in the ground, so they could have cancelled it. Cancel the cutting off, the turning into Licky End. So these are just nothing that's actually, physically part of the major A38 works, but these small sort of quote unquote side projects. No, they're not labelled as side projects, but those bits that connect onto it.
They're not the main trunk road element. They're the bits that support it, and actually they could be reduced. Like the active travel that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. If we just got a few of those sort of projects cancelled. That would have been a lot better. Another thing that the Lib Dems were suggesting, and then Reform also pledged that they would do the same, was to actually hold a review. So we'll have a review and a consultation with the public, so we can see what they want, what they think is working, what ideas they've got. Again, that hasn't come to light. So maybe they're going to review in future, but we're so far down the line now that the opportunity to have the review and actually have some meaningful consequences has gone. So
yeah, I would have thought at the moment the review would have been ideal now, not in another 3 or 4 months when you've only got maybe 9 months left in theory of the program to go. Do you think throughout the process that you've mentioned before, you've been speaking to residents, you're one of the residents affected by the scheme. Do you think both the Conservatives and Reform have continued to keep consultation with residents throughout? You've mentioned that you don't feel that you've been, as a county councillor, perhaps been listened to. Do you think residents have?
Residents will overwhelmingly tell you the answer is no, they've not been listened to. If you were to go and knock 5 doors in Bromsgrove and ask for people's views on BREP, they would probably all come back with the exact same views, that it's not a good idea and it's not working and they haven't been listened to. Obviously there were some people that are going to think it's okay, but they are few and far between.
Yes, and having spent only the one day over at Bromsgrove for the most recent campaign, BREP was a hot topic, as was the Western Relief Road, which is where it kind of worked into there, and was the local plan. And the one thing that was commented was that at least the Lib Dems were listening, at least the Lib Dems were attending meetings and sort of trying to get resolution and movement forward. And that's obviously one of the Lib Dem key parts, is that we are local champions with local people. Do you think that moving forward with any other potential stuff that could come through County Hall for Bromsgrove, that you would be able to relay the conversations back to Reform and actually get maybe some positive thoughts? Or do you feel that Reform have kind of close shop a little bit and aren't really listening and paying attention?
Well, I suppose we'll have to see what happens. But as you know, John, recently the Lib Dems won the Bromsgrove South by-election, which means that the Lib Dems now represent, so of the seats that fall within the town of Bromsgrove on the county council, 3 out of the 4 are Lib Dem, 1 is Reform. So Bromsgrove has a really strong voice for Lib Dems now at the county council. But also, as a consequence of this, Reform now have 26 seats. So they are 3 seats off a majority. Now, if there's anything they want to get through, they're going to have to work with other parties. So, if there's anything else they're going to talk about doing in Bromsgrove, I want them to come to us and to talk to us, and we can give them our local expertise. We can say what residents have been saying to us. We haven't really seen much of that. As I say, the Cabinet for Highways has been happy to speak to me about BREP, although we haven't had any form of meaningful change or consequence. So, I mean, the ball's in Reform's court really to start working with others, because it's completely unmanageable for the county council to run the way they're continuing, where there's not much dialogue going on with the other parties, and that they haven't got a majority, so they're going to have to work with others to try and get any form of changes through.
And you mentioned there, because I remember in the question where you asked the cabinet member, you did hint at the fact that you had these differing opinions between yourself and Carl. Do you think that in the future that might change, that you might actually be able to get on the same page, or do you think you are sort of diametrically opposed in terms of your feelings on BREP?
In terms of feelings, I mean, I think we are diametrically opposed. As the Lib Dems, we are the one party that, as I say, has been consistent on BREP from day one, that we've been opposed to this, and we haven't thought the plans have been good. We're so far down the line now that I can't see that I would end up budging to a situation where I think this is good. I would love to be proved wrong. Let's say by the end of next year the plan's complete and the traffic is so fast that you don't see any cars. I will hold my hands up and say, we got it wrong. I accept that. I just can't see that that's the scenario we're going to end up in. So when Reform thinks that the works are essential, that's where we disagree.
And I suppose on that note, there's been so much funding allocated from presumably predominantly from central government that at this point there's kind of no point now reversing that decision. It kind of has to go to that, good or bad, it has to reach that end point. But what would you consider as a good outcome now, looking at where you are and how bad this has been kind of managed in many respects? What do you consider for yourself and for residents? What would be a good outcome at the end of this?
The outcome would be that it tackles the traffic issues we've got, but that's not where we're going to end up, unfortunately. Looking at the plans of how this has been carried out, that's not where we're going to end up. If, let's say, tomorrow the Lib Dems took over running of the council, one of the first things we would do is actually hold a review on BREP, see what's been done wrong. Well, we know obviously what's been done wrong, but see, from the inside what's been done wrong. What can we do differently? And are there any other things we can implement? So, for example, a strategic transport assessment, that's something we've been pushing for a long time. We've had promises for years from the Conservatives that we would get one. I think it's been 6 years now. We're still yet to see it. So doing a new strategic transport assessment to look at where in Bromsgrove we could do other forms of works to improve traffic flows. I think that would be the key thing that we would do. But yeah, with the current BREP schemes, I cannot envisage a scenario where there's improvements that are noticeable from what's going on.
And particularly when, as you referenced earlier, with the local plan, you've got a lot of new housing being already considered and being planned for, and you've got even more coming down the pipeline, particularly with the government targets. Other areas just down the road from you a little bit, to a certain extent, are taking on quite a large number of housing as well. So there's going to be potentially even more strain on the system. So does that reinforce a new approach to look again at the Western Relief Road, or even though, as you said, the prime site's gone, is there an opportunity, do you think, that might return to the table?
I think we have to see what transport experts tell us, but that's why I think we need a strategic transport assessment and to do a review to see what sites we have left, because the previous reports that we had to the district council were from 2018, I think it was 2018 and 2015, so they're quite old now, and obviously a lot has changed. So we want some transport assessors to come in and say, look, these are, potentially you've got one of these options remaining. You could do this instead that you hadn't looked at previously. That's why we've been trying to get a review in place, conducted by the council, to see what options we can actually take. Just touching on, obviously, I know you mentioned the local plan. The local plan is part of the district council, but obviously it has to work with the county council. So you could probably do a whole episode on the local plan, but in terms of how that connects with the county council, at the county council meeting in, I think it was September, one of the questions I put to the Cabinet and Highways in particular was that in my division of Bromsgrove East, the current draft local plan has 1,850 homes in my division connecting onto the A38. Now, that is massive. When you think about the Opals, which is, as I said earlier, 900 homes, it's going to be absolute chaos if they decide to go ahead with those. So I did actually put a question to Highways, whether they thought it would be suitable for the A38, whether it can cope with those new houses if they do go ahead. I didn't really get an adequate response in my view. I did ask that they would respond to the consultation. I'm yet to see the response they've submitted, so let's see. But yeah, the county council is going to have to work with the district council on this. I think heads needs to come together to really take seriously the issues we've got.
I'm probably going to circle back to that in a second with the unitary question, because that's another big question, how this might impact that. But I'm going to touch on the strategic transport plan as it is. As somebody in the resident in Wyre Forest in Stourport, we've been shouting for the same, because when you look at the current version 4, Stourport's infrastructure is mentioned in one table on page 60 of 62. So we are also desperately asking for a review of the strategic transport plan, because we don't think it's right. It is due to last another couple of years, but I think with everything going on, there should be. I certainly agree with you. I think there needs to be a review. and particularly with all the new housing and such. And that then kind of brings us round to that unitary thing, is that going forward, whether we go into one Worcestershire or a north and south, I personally want a north and south, but it's another conversation for another time. Do you think the merging of the district and the county councils will actually have any improvement towards Bromsgrove for its highways needs and BREP in particular?
Well, look, let me touch on Unitary just a bit. So I'm a dual hatted councillor, so I'm a district and county councillor. And one of the big frustrations I get as a councillor is somebody reports an issue to me, and you have to ensure you get the correct council that you're going to. Sometimes you go to one council and they pass it back and forth. They don't know who actually is responsible, and they have an argument with each other. So, there's a lot of things that could be ironed out if you had a unitary council, just a single tier level. My big concern that I've got, and I'm sure you would agree with me, because obviously if we both back north and south, is that if we had a one Worcestershire council, it's effectively it loses more connectivity from residents. I think the best decisions are decisions that are made by people that are local, that are on the ground in their area and understand what goes on. So a north and south model would be more appropriate in my view, because it's obviously a smaller area of Bromsgrove, Regents and Wyre Forest working together, rather than Bromsgrove being one part of a whole county-wide approach. So I would never promise that a unitary council would solve some of the issues we've got. I think it presents opportunities, but I also think it has drawbacks as well. I'm just going to do all I can to try and push for the north and south model, but let's see. I voted for north and south whenever it's come up, both at district and county level. But some of our councils are apart on this and taking different views on what models they're approaching. So let's see.
Yeah, and Wyre Forest. We're doing this on the 13th of November, just for reference. But Wyre Forest had their meeting last night to discuss what option they were going to do, and they've continued down the one Worcestershire route, which was no real surprise. There were some interesting comments that were made about other viewpoints, which we'll probably come to again in another point. But it just seems that they're, particularly for the north, which would be the three districts as it is, they're still focusing very much on we're a district, we're Bromsgrove district, and we're Regents borough, and we're Wyre Forest. Whereas I've been approaching the subject very much from it's a town level. So Bromsgrove as a town, and then the villages around it. Regents as a town with the villages. Wyre Forest doesn't like that approach, but we feel that already Stourport gets the poor end of the stick. So we are trying not to join the north if we can help it. It's nothing personal.
You're trying to escape.
We just align more with the south, and we think, as Liberal Democrats in Stourport and Wyre Forest, we think we would have a better chance of getting some of the infrastructure we need dealt with by the south. But it's interesting. We don't think a single unitary will give us any real say either, because we would have maybe two councillors, possibly three, out of a room full of 100, and that's why we don't think we'll get the kind of, and I just, on that sort of theme, it was, do you think as Bromsgrove, because even under one or two you'll still be one of the largest sort of collectives in the room, whether you thought that might open up opportunities for the Western Relief Road or the next sort of type of BREP. So that's what I brought it up for, really. So there you go. I think we've kind of covered everything that we were probably looking to cover. So is there anything that you would like to add about BREP that we haven't sort of touched on already?
Well, I speak about it pretty much every day and at every council meeting, I think, with the exception of one county council meeting. I think I've spoken about it at every single meeting. So I've had a lot to say. I've obviously had a lot to say for years and a lot to say today. So I'll leave it as that. I don't think I need to give any more information out, but residents can always reach out to me and have a chat about it. More than happy to.
And I'm sure it'll be a topic that we'll come back to, and you'll certainly be talking about locally in Bromsgrove for at least the next year, if not maybe a little bit more, depending on how how on time the scheme is delivered.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and no doubt we'll be talking again in the future about the local plan, because that is still a big issue in Bromsgrove, and we might have a few of you on to have a conversation with that. So, but that then just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for coming on and being our second guest in conversation with. And obviously, we'll put your contact details and any relevant documents into the links below, and you can be reached via your email, which we'll include in the bottom below. So, thank you ever so much for your time today, Sam, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, John. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see us cover a specific topic in Worcestershire, please let us know in the comments below. You can also watch more of our content here.